we've got a couple of things that I want to talk about. The first, I was asleep the other night, and I had this dream that I was back in prison and that one of my cellmates was being assaulted and sexually assaulted. And in the dream, I did not do anything. Me and the other cellmates turned our backs and did not help this individual. And I woke up, and it disturbed me so much that I could not go back to sleep. And it disturbed me throughout the day that I had that dream. Now, here's the thing about prison that most people don't understand. In most prison facilities, that kind of thing does not happen. I understand that it's known for that, but in most prison facilities, that kind of shit does not go on. I never saw it happen. I served 7.5 years, never saw it happen, never had whispers of it even happening. Okay, so it doesn't really happen like that. Maybe in the higher security levels it does. Maybe in some of these state institutions that are notorious, that kind of thing happens. But the institutions, and I was in a few, the institutions that I was in, that never happened. Now, why am I talking about this on the Criminal Insights segment? And the reason why is, as I was processing through this that day, and subsequent to that day, I've been thinking about this a lot. It really hits me that the power of silence and how that results oftentimes in crimes being successful, not being prosecuted, and victims continuing to be victimized, things like that. That failure to speak up and say something out of fear, out of, you don't want to get involved, out of whatever that is, that failure to say or do something often results in crimes being successful. And oddly enough, that's some of the stuff we're going to talk about today in today's meat of the episode. It just hits me that, and it's not only that, but it's also this concept of power, that people who feel powerless or people who are subjugated to an authority, prison guards, what have you, those people tend to accept a level of abuse that they usually would not accept, or a level of victimization that they usually would not accept were it not for that power hierarchy that's in place. And I think you combine those two all of a sudden. You combine that concept of power dynamics with the concept of silence, of not wanting to be involved, and all of a sudden you've got a lot of crime out there that continues to be successful and continues to be perpetrated, and the criminal, the abuser, the predator never has to face consequences. The reason I say that is we really need to get to the point, and people who follow me on LinkedIn, you see me do this, or on Twitter. I'm that guy that I call a lot of shit out. It bothered me to no end. I just had a dream about not acting. We as a society have to get to the point where we are not scared to speak up, speak out, and act on the things that need to be acted upon. There's been cases upon cases throughout history, of recent history, of people being attacked, and the crowds haven't stepped in and done anything about that. We see videos on that. It's been on YouTube, on the talk. That idea of silence, not being involved, and someone in a position of power that results in someone being harmed, there's something horribly wrong with that. That is the first criminal insight of the day. The second criminal insight of the day is this idea of snitches get stitches. That shit ain't right. It doesn't work like that at all. Back a few years ago, after 1987, the federal government, the justice system, they sat their little happy asses down and they said, you know what? All these mobsters that are out there, every one of these damn mobsters, they don't talk. We give them this prison time. They out in a few years. They never say a word. They never sing like birds, anything else like that. We got to change that. So what they did was they revamped the entire justice system and the sentencing guidelines and everything else. So after 1987, your ass didn't get parole anymore in the federal system. Your ass serves 87.7% of whatever you're sentenced to. So that's the first step. The second thing is they came up with this thing called the RICO Act, which means all of a sudden, at the same time revamping the sentencing guidelines, that means that, hey, we're not going to give you nickels and dimes anymore. We're going to give you 25s and 50-cent pieces as far as prison time goes. Let's see what your ass thinks about that, unless you would like to sit down and talk to us a little bit. That resulted in today, in most cases, you will have people that will rat on each other. And I'm going to tell you, the way the federal prison system works, the way prison works overall, is you're either talking or you wish you had talked. Because that's where we are today as far as punishment goes. And everybody feels that way. I know I'm not supposed to talk in absolutes, but everybody feels that way. It's not just the people who are getting handed out 25 and 50-year sentences. It's the people that, 5 or 6 years. Everybody talks, and there's a reason for that. If you look at game theory, who would have thought that Brett Johnson would be talking about game theory today? If you look at game theory, which is strategic decision making, you've got this thing called the prisoner's dilemma. And here's how the prisoner's dilemma works. You've got two guys. They decide that they're going to break into a store, do a nighttime burglary. All right. So they break into the store, they steal all the diamonds, and then they run out. A couple of days later, both these guys are arrested. They're thrown in the county jail. They're separated. So you got one guy at the end of the one wing of the jail, the other guy at the other end of the jail, where they can't communicate with each other. Now here's where it gets interesting. If both guys keep their mouths shut, all right, they don't say anything. If both guys keep their mouths shut, let's say they'll get 3 years apiece. That's the most they're going to get, 3 years apiece. If one guy talks and the other guy doesn't, the guy that talks is going to get maybe a year, year and a half. The guy that doesn't talk, his little stupid ass is going to get 10 to 12 years. If both guys talk, they're going to get 7 years a pop. So what happens? How does that play out? I'll tell you how that plays out. It plays out that both guys talk. Why? Because you've got them both at the end of each other. You got the cops playing each other off of them, and one guy does not know if the other guy is telling. So that one guy doesn't want that 10 to 12 year sentence. So he's sitting there going, shit, I better tell what I need to get my ass out, because that guy ain't my friend. That guy is my associate, and that guy I know I can't trust. So you're going to rat on guys. That's the way this shit works. Game theory is absolutely outstanding when you start to consider strategic decision making, which is what game theory is, when you start to consider that with businesses, with life, with prison sentences, stuff like that. DOJ sat down and they pulled their little asses some really good game theory out. And that's where we're at today. So everyone talks at the end of the day. The only thing you have to figure out is what motivation that individual needs to talk. Is it fear of prison time? Is it wanting to be rewarded? Is it wanting to get revenge? Is it fear of loss? I mean, what is it that causes someone to talk? Now, that being said, we're going to move over into the meat of the episode and see if some of this stuff actually applies to what we're talking about today.